Good evening, and welcome to a meeting of the Chesapeake School Board. A printed agenda is available in the back of the room if you wish to follow the business items we'll be discussing this evening. Roll call, Dr. Smith.
Mr. Elijah Colon.
Here.
Miss Amanda Dean.
Here.
Miss Malia Huddle.
Here.
Mr. Mike Lamonia.
Here.
Mr. John McCormick.
Here.
Mr. Norman Poole.
Here.
Dr. Brittany Walker.
Here.
Mrs. Kim Scott, Vice Chair.
Here.
Mrs. Angie Swigert, Chair.
Here. The next item is the adoption of the agenda. Does the superintendent or any board member wish to add or delete an item from the agenda?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No amendments to add to the agenda, but we will need a closed session for personnel matters, student disciplinary matters, real estate matters, and legal matters.
I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Scott. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Poole. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All opposed? Dr. Smith.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
We will now go into the closed portion of our meeting. I'll ask Vice Chair Scott to read the language to take us into closed session.
Chair Swigert, I move that the board should convene in closed session pursuant to the Code of Virginia, Sections 2.2-3711, subsections A, 1, 2, 3, and 7, for discussion and consideration of personnel matters, including administrative appointments, student disciplinary matters, real estate matters to include the disposition of publicly held property, and consultation with legal counsel regarding probable litigation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Lamonia. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Dr. Smith.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
Before we move into closed session and in accordance with Bylaw 2-33, we will need a motion to approve the remote participation of Sands Anderson attorney Nikki Chook, who will join us for the discussion in closed session. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Huddle. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Walker. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Dr. Smith.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
We are now in closed session. Vice Chair Scott, would you please read the statement to bring us back into open session?
Yes, Chair Swigert, I move that the record shows that the only items discussed in the closed meeting were those specifically cited in the motion to convene into the closed meeting and those lawfully exempted from statutory meeting requirements.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Lamonia. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Dr. Smith.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
Dr. Cotton, do you have items resulting from closed session?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. The first motion, I recommend that student number 1 be expelled.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Scott. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Dr. Smith.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
Dr. Khan, do you have any additional items resulting from closed?
Yes, thank you. The following administrative appointment is submitted for board approval. Mrs. Jennifer L. Zagendorf, interim principal at Thurgood Marshall Elementary, to principal, Thurgood Marshall Elementary.
I'll entertain a motion for approval. Moved by Mr. Lamonia. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. McCormick. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Dr. Smith.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
So we will now move on to the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation. Apologies. At this time, I'd like to call upon Pastor Patrick Kaysen from Bethany Baptist Church to provide tonight's invocation. Afterward, I'll ask Micah Green, a 5th grade student from Cedar Road Elementary School, to lead us in the pledge. Please stand as you are able.
Eternal and all-wise God, as we have gathered here today in service to the students, families, and educators of Chesapeake, we take a moment to reflect on our shared purpose. May we be guided by wisdom, integrity, and compassion as we make decisions that shape the future of our community. May we listen with open hearts and minds, respecting the diverse voices and experiences that enrich our schools. May we seek solutions that foster equity, learning, and opportunity for all. In the spirit of unity, let us move forward with kindness, patience, and a commitment to the common good. May our work this evening be meaningful, productive, bringing progress and hope to those we serve. With gratitude for the responsibility entrusted to us, we begin this meeting in a spirit of cooperation and purpose. In the strong names of God we pray, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much to Pastor Kaysen and to Micah and your family, and of course your principal, Ms. Page. We appreciate all of you being here with us tonight. We will now move on to awards and recognitions. The item that we will be doing tonight is honoring our VHSL Fall Chesapeake champions. Over to you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Chair Swigert. Tonight, we are excited to recognize some of our VHSL Fall Chesapeake champions. At this time, I would like to invite Mr. Paul Wilson, Director of Student Services, to the podium, who will facilitate the awards for these students.
Good evening, Chair Swigert, Vice Chair Scott, members of the school board, Dr. Cotton, and members of the superintendent's cabinet. One of the great privileges of the Department of Student Support Services is celebrating the achievements and successes of the students and coaches in Chesapeake Public Schools. Tonight is one of those nights as we are here to recognize the VHSL 2024-2025 Fall All-State participants and state champions in competition cheerleading, boys volleyball, and varsity football. We will recognize these students and coaches in two different groups tonight. Our first group of students and coaches earned VHSL First Team All-State honors in competition cheerleading, boys volleyball, and varsity football. Voted on by coaches across Virginia, earning All-State First Team honors is a remarkable achievement worthy of celebration and recognition. Students and coaches, please take one step forward when I call your name. For First Team All-State in competition cheerleading, we have Brianna McCullough from Indian River High School. The coach is Haley Estes. For First Team All-State boys volleyball, we have Elion Otunuk from Grassfield High School. The coach is Paul Emler. And for First Team All-State varsity football, we have Lonnie Andrews, Jamari Deloach, Travis Johnson, Dory Lewis Wilson, Brandon Nesbitt, Jordan Rayner, and Malachi White, all from Oscar Smith High School. Their head coach is Chris Scott. If any family members, staff members, or supporters are in the audience to celebrate the accomplishments of these students and coaches, please stand at this time to be recognized by the board. Congratulations to our all-state first-team athletes in competition cheerleading, boys volleyball, and varsity football and their coaches. It's now time for you to move to the right to meet the members of the school board. this impressive group of student athletes and coaches behind me is no stranger to winning on the Commonwealth of Virginia's biggest stages. After easily handling their opponent in the state semifinals, Oscar Smith High and James Madison High entered the championship game at both a perfect 14-0 record. The scoreboard listed the higher-ranked Oscar Smith as the home team, but it was clear that this was a de facto road game held right in the backyard of the Dukes of James Madison University. At 5 p.m. in the middle of December in the mountains of Harrisonburg, Virginia, the game conditions were as adverse as the challenge before our Chesapeake team. And with only 2 minutes left in the game, Oscar Smith was down by a touchdown after not scoring any points since the first quarter. Not only did Oscar Smith tie the game on the pivotal drive, but in the final 2 minutes, they forced a turnover, scored again, and played championship defense on the final play of the game. A failed two-point conversion by James Madison at the end of regulation after an improbable touchdown from a Hail Mary pass. I'm able to describe this with such detail because I was one of the cheering fans in the stands when Oscar Smith brought home its 5th state championship and his 3rd in the last 5 years. But please don't just take my word for it. Even Wavy TV 10 recognized this game as an instant classic. Let's take a look.
Championship Saturday in high school football. 3 teams from the 757 playing for state titles today. We start in Class 6, a battle of undefeated heavyweights. Oscar Smith from Chesapeake against James Madison from Northern Virginia. James Catato joins us from Bridgeforth Stadium in Harrisonburg to tell us about a game that was an instant classic.
Brian, this game was a great one. Oscar Smith, James Madison for the Class 6 state title here in Harrisonburg. A battle of unbeatens. I don't want to waste anybody's time. Let's dive right into these highlights. The Tigers look for their first state title since 2021, taking on a very game Warhawks side. But let's go right to the 4th. Warhawks down a point, deep in Tiger territory. Dominic Nicely putting it nicely. He's going to Coastal Carolina, punches the 7-yard touchdown run home to put James Madison up 14-7. 8 minutes later, with 1:45 to go in the game, sophomore quarterback Lonnie Andrews put the team on his back this drive. Finds Travis Johnson. Johnson does the rest. A 91-yard drive orchestrated by their sophomore quarterback knots it up at 14. Next Tiger drive off a forced fumble from Breon Dupree. It's B.J. Nesbitt time. Nesbitt had 85 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. This one puts Smith up with 19 seconds left in regulation. So 21-14, Madison with the ball. Cale Yates needs a prayer, so decides to go for the Hail Mary. Airs it out, and he finds Nicely to find all the odds. 48-yard touchdown. 21-20, Smith leading. Madison elects to go for 2. The throw is up. No good. Oscar Smith celebrates and captures its first state championship since 2021.
If it were easy, everybody could do it. And it wasn't easy. These guys made it tough on us. But these Tigers, those Cubs, woke up and got the job done.
You know, I'm very happy for this team. You know, we fought through the whole game. We stayed back to back. You know, we had down times, but we know we got to keep each other back.
It's indescribable, man. It's just a blessing, man. I've been waiting on this moment all my life. I've been dreaming on this moment, so it's just an indescribable feeling, man. It's a great feeling.
And now, Oscar Smith, back better than ever, bringing Class 6 gold back to Chesapeake. Here at Bridgeforth Stadium in Harrisonburg for the Sports Wrap, I'm James Catato.
That night, it was evident that Oscar Smith not only had the eye of the tiger, but they had a heart of a champion. As this is such a large group tonight, students and coaches, please raise your hand for me to be recognized when I call your name. Aiden Amerson, Lonnie Andrews, Trayshawn Bradley, Isaiah Bray, Dante Brooks Jr., Isaiah Brown, Zaire Brown, Kamonte Bynum, DeCorey Cassell, Romero Copeland, Jaden Coville, Uriel Cuffey, Tyjay Curtis, Jamari Custis, Jaden Dabbs, Raylan Dancy, Cooper Daniel, Braden Davis, Jaleel Deckel, Jamari Deloach, Dante Dent, Tyron Drain, Breon Dupree, Jayshawn George, Breon Gibson, Aiden Griffin, Tristan Griffin, Demetrius Gunter, Lincoln Holliday, Larry Hamill, Vashawn Harmon, Justin Harper, Kamari Harrison, Marco Hernandez, Justin Hinton, Stephen Arbara, Orion Jackson, Nayrod Jarvis, Rowan Javier, Josiah Jenkins, Travis Johnson, Christopher Johnson II, Alvin Jones, Damari Lawrence Cordez, Dory Lewis Wilson, Andre Lamel Alvarez, Tristan Mack, Malik Marsh, Jacoby Marshall, Davion Martin, Charles McGlown, Darius Moore, Anthony Morgan, Brandon Nesbitt, Malik Neverson, Cameron Pearson, Jordan Rayner, Serdon Ringer, James Salmon, Randall Scott, Jaden Smith, Nathan Smith, Miguel Smith, Silas Stanton, Octavian Taylor, Ozzie Tower, Caden Walker, Reginald Wallace, Drayan Wallace, Kenmorris Watts, Malachi White, Jaleel Wiley, Malik Williams, Makai Williams, Pharrell Williams, Lennox Williams, Tyron Wilson, Brendan Woodley, Zaire Ziegler. And the head coach is Chris Scott. I would also like the assistant coaches of the Oscar Smith varsity football team and the administration of Oscar Smith to be recognized at this time. Please stand if you're in the audience. If any family members or supporters are in the audience to celebrate the accomplishments of these state champions, please stand at this time to be recognized by the board. Congratulations to our Class 6 VHSL varsity football state champions and their coaches. You can now move to the right to meet the members of the school board. Thank you, Madam Chair. This concludes my presentation for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And congrats again to the Oscar Smith Tigers. Amazing job. You know, I'd like to say we're surprised, but we're not. You guys have a legacy there, and it's just amazing to watch. We'll now move on to our public hearings. Tonight we have 2 public hearings in addition to the time allotted that we have for the hearing of citizens. We will begin with the first public hearing on the superintendent's proposed budgets. Dr. Smith, are there any citizens who have requested time to speak under the public hearing for the proposed budgets this evening?
No, ma'am, we have no citizens for the budget.
Thank you. Are there any citizens who have requested time to speak under the second public hearing for the proposed rezoning this evening?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have 1 citizen signed up to speak.
Thank you. I want to thank the speaker who has signed up to speak to the board this evening. There are 2 ways that citizens can request time to speak at the meeting. You can call the clerk's office before 12 noon the day of the meeting, or sign up to speak prior to the start of the meeting. All in-person requests to speak must be submitted to the deputy clerk at least 5 minutes prior to the published meeting start time. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the board. Once your allotted time is over, we ask that you promptly exit the podium, and you may choose to continue to sit in the boardroom if seats are available, but standing or sitting on the floor will not be permitted, and you may not block exit doors. We would also like to ask that you refrain from any behavior that disrupts the meeting, including the use of profanity, applause, cheering, or jeering. Dr. Smith, please call our first speaker.
Yes, I believe speaker number 1 is ready.
If it's ready to come up. I'm Jimmy Schutte, Virginia Beach, Virginia, also an employee of B.M. Williams Primary. I know at the January 30th meeting, there was some discussion about the rezoning proposal, and they brought you information on developable land, 80 acres in the Crestwood zone and 36 acres in the B.M. Williams zone. Without knowing whether that's high density or single residence, it's really kind of meaningless information, but I will say the trends in the B.M. Williams zone for the last 10 years have been all high density. And they also gave you some information on the level of service units that were in the 2 zones, 8 for Crestwood Intermediate and 225. So 20%, 20 times higher number of level of service units that are coming online sometime in the future. We don't know when, but they've been approved. They talked about the ratio that you would determine how many students come from 225 units. If you use a national average of like a quarter kid, 0.25 per each of the units, we could be looking at 56 kids or 60 kids coming from those 225 units. There's a lot of military kids in Chesapeake as well, so potentially there could be even more kids in those units. I've been at B.M. Williams long enough where the calculations, you do the best you can. We've had apartments that have had a lot more kids show up than were anticipated. So when we're looking at rezoning, what we are asking for is to add the 72 kids from CPI that aren't included in your calculations. And now we're looking at prospective future kids. The only prospective future kids that are actually on the books are the 8 units and maybe the 225 units. So take the 72 CPI kids that we have that aren't included in the calculations that the state of Virginia does include on their website for our total student population and add 56 kids on top of that. We're probably looking at option 3 being the most equitable option of the ones that are viable. I think 4 is off the table, no portables at a new school. 2 is very advantageous to B.M. Williams. So I imagine you're weighing your options between 1 and 3. And we had talked about using efficient use of the building, getting everybody in from the portables. I just want you to know what that actually looks like. There are staff members who are in sunlit portables that if we bring them all in, they're probably going to be in a storage closet in some capacity or another when we say efficient use of the building. Just throwing that out that generally. I know you're doing your best you can to figure this out in a complicated scenario. My personal opinion is that option 3 is the most equitable option for both schools. Thank you.
This concludes our speakers for the public hearing on the rezoning.
Thank you. We will now move on to the hearing of citizens. During their allotted time, speakers should observe our rules of decorum and know that expression of concerns and criticism on matters of school policy and operations is welcome. While the speaker's own comments are welcome, they may not play pre-recorded messages. Dr. Smith, are there any citizens who have requested time to speak under the hearing of citizens this evening?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have 2 citizens requesting time to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Please call the first speaker.
Speaker number 1, it's your turn at the podium. Please state your name and city of residence before you begin.
My name is Margaret Sullivan, and I live in Chesapeake. Good evening, members of the school board and fellow community members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address an important issue that affects not only the safety of our students and staff, but also the overall functionality of our school environment. I've had 2 incidences in the past 2 years where the cameras were present but malfunctioning. One was a violent act against my child on the bus. There were several witnesses who came forward and no one was hurt, but it could have been worse. I was told by the bus office that they don't know cameras are malfunctioning until they go to pull footage. They really need at least a weekly check on these cameras, which I know is extra time and not convenient, but good security is not convenient. The other incident happened 15 feet from the entrance to the school. My child's bike was stolen from the front of the school. Thank goodness it was just a bike and not a bully who violently beat another student up, or that someone was shot or showing off a weapon or anything of that nature. But these are things we have to keep in mind these days. It turned out the cameras in the front of the school by the entrance were not working at the time the bike was stolen and had not been working since one of the first days of school. At the point of my incident, that would have been about 3 months without working security cameras. Even when following up on the incident later, it was about 4 months without working cameras, and then finally around the 4.5-month mark, they had been fixed. That's almost halfway through the school year. The importance of functional security cameras cannot be overstated. Whether it's monitoring hallways, entrances, parking lots, or areas like the playground, these cameras help safeguard against a variety of risks, everything from bullying and vandalism to more serious threats. When these cameras fail, we lose a critical layer of protection. Additionally, malfunctioning cameras create uncertainty and mistrust within our community. Teachers, students, and parents need to know that their school is a safe environment where their well-being is a top priority. I respectfully urge the school board to prioritize the resolution of these issues. Specifically, I recommend the following steps. 1, immediate investigation and assessment. Identifying the root cause will allow for a targeted solution. 2, upgrading and replacing equipment. Faulty, outdated cameras should be replaced with more reliable, state-of-the-art equipment. Regular maintenance checks should be scheduled to prevent future breakdowns. 3, transparency and communication. And 4, ensuring redundancy. It may also be wise to have a backup system in place, such as cloud storage for footage, to ensure that if one camera goes down, others are still functional. In conclusion, I believe that every member of our school community deserves to feel safe and secure in our educational environment. By addressing the camera malfunction swiftly and effectively, we can provide reassurance and create a safer, more supportive space for learning. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Speaker number 2, it's your turn at the podium. Please state your name and city of residence before you begin.
Good evening. My name is Melinda Firstman. I live here in Chesapeake. I'd like to talk about access to equal education for students in our district. I'll discuss my daughter's specific situation because it's familiar to me, but her situation is relatable to her peers. My daughter was proud to be in the gifted and talented programs at Grassfield Elementary and Hugo Owens Middle. She developed an interest in computer coding and programming during 5th grade and self-taught herself block coding using the online platforms Scratch and Code.org. By 6th grade, she was creating short films and stop-motion animations using coding before ever having taken a computer science or technology course. She eventually took 3 computer science and 2 technology courses in middle school. In 8th grade, she joined robotics, and that was the first year the robotics club had a team qualified to go to nationals, which is state championships in Richmond. Her computer science teacher has referred to her as a, quote, programming prodigy, and has said things like, quote, within 3 weeks of starting script-based programming unit in our class, she mastered the course content and, of her own volition, expanded her studies and surpassed the abilities of the instructor, unquote. She has previously stated that my daughter's coding, quote, runs circles around hers. My daughter applied to the Governor's STEM Academy at Grassfield High when she was in 8th grade. To her disappointment, she was not accepted. After speaking to some of her teachers, we concluded it was because her grades were not good enough. She was not a straight A student in middle school. You're gonna have to excuse me. I could make excuses and go into details about how at the age of 10 and 11, we feared for our safety, often sleeping in the car. And she developed the habit, because of some of those circumstances, some of the things that we experienced, she developed the habit of avoiding tasks if she couldn't commit to it 100%, because it was better for her emotionally not to attempt than to attempt and fail. Her grades were typically 100% if she attempted the task. And her grade was 0 if she did not attempt it. That does not average to an A student. She was not a straight A student because of ability. She was not a straight A student because of circumstances. Our situation changed and our healing began. Now my daughter is in 9th grade.
Ma'am, I'm so sorry. We do have a 3-minute marker, but if you would like to email the board to continue your comments, we'd love to hear the remainder of your statement when you have the opportunity
Okay,
to tell us.
thank you.
Thank
I
you.
read this much quicker when I did it.
Understood.
Get emotional.
And thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you.
This concludes our speakers for this evening.
Thank you for sharing your comments. You know, our practice is to receive information. However, we do not usually engage in dialogue, and that is our intent tonight. If appropriate and not already provided, someone from the superintendent's staff will evaluate your concern and provide a response. We will now consider the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion for approval. Moved by Dr. Walker. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Poole. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Dr. Smith.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
We will now move on to our information agenda. The first item in this evening is the monthly financial report. Ms. Glod.
Thank you, Chair Swigert. In this evening's board meeting documents, we have included the interim financial report for January 2025. I'm happy to report that revenues and expenditures are within the expected range. Total realized revenue for January was $54.4 million, which includes $30.6 million from the state, $23.5 million from the city, and the remaining funds from other local revenues and the federal government. Enrollment is trending less than fall enrollment, but remains greater than the ADM budget assumption. We will continue to monitor enrollment closely as March enrollment will affect fiscal year 24-25 final revenue. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Seeing no questions at this time, thank you for the report. The next item on the information agenda is the work session for the superintendent's proposed budgets. Back to you again, Ms. Glad.
All right. Good evening to Chair Swigert, Vice Chair Scott, and school board members. In this evening's presentation, I will provide the latest updates on the state budget and review the schedule for upcoming budget meetings. I'll get started with the state budget update. Tonight's update reviews the House and Senate's proposed budget amendments at the time of crossover. As a reminder, the proposed budget amendments are to the biennial budget, which encompasses the current fiscal year and the next fiscal year. Therefore, I'll highlight how each chamber's budget amendments affect fiscal year 24-25 and the superintendent's proposed fiscal year 25-26 budget. The General Assembly short session wrapped up this past Saturday. We have reviewed the resulting conference budget and have a preliminary estimate of how it impacts the superintendent's proposed budget based on available materials. I'll also provide the resulting conference budget during tonight's review. First, we'll take a look at current 24-25 fiscal year. As presented at the January 13th board meeting, the governor's proposed biennial budget amendments include technical updates, such as updates to English language learner data, sales tax revenue estimates, and ADM projections based on fall membership. The incremental revenue impact to the current fiscal year is $7.7 million. The House did not propose additional amendments for fiscal year 24-25. However, the Senate proposed an amendment to fund a one-time bonus payment of $1,000 for SOQ instructional and support positions to be paid no later than June 1st, 2025. The estimated incremental revenue impact of the Senate's bonus proposal to the governor's amended budget for the current fiscal year is $4.4 million. We estimate a $1,000 bonus for all contracted employees will cost roughly $7 million. School divisions do have the discretion to determine the amount of bonuses per employee to maximize the use of these funds. This proposed budget bill was included in the conference budget. If approved by the governor, there are a couple of options for carrying out this budget bill. First, an appropriation request will be needed and approved to spend the $4.4 million. Then, we can spread the bonus across contracted staff, resulting in a bonus of about $700 per employee. Or, we can use the savings from this year's budget, if available, in combination with the additional appropriation to fund the bonus at $1,000 per employee, prorated based on the FTE status. As you can see, this particular amendment will likely be challenging for many localities, including Chesapeake. As a reminder, it is our typical practice to request any revenue received beyond appropriation for the current fiscal year as one-time funds for future use. Now we will shift to the fiscal year 25-26 state budget update. This table compares the budget amendments proposed by the House and the Senate to Governor Youngkin's amended budget. As a reminder, the superintendent's proposed operating budget is based on the governor's amended budget. The first row highlights the House and Senate proposals to eliminate the support position cap, which was implemented in response to the Great Recession. Support positions such as instructional support and most operations and central office administration roles are currently underfunded due to this cap. Currently, the state funds 24 support positions per every 1,000 students. The proposal is to raise that to 27.89 support positions per 1,000 students. The second row highlights the House and Senate proposals for additional support to special education students. The third row outlines the House's proposal for a one-time bonus payment of $1,000 for SOQ instructional support positions. Like the Senate's proposed budget amendment, school divisions have the discretion to determine the amount of bonuses per employee to maximize the use of these funds. The final row focuses on school construction. Both the governor and the House proposed funding for competitive grants. In addition to competitive grants, the Senate allows all localities to impose a local sales tax of up to 1% to support school renovation and construction once the locality receives approval by a local referendum. Under current law, only 9 localities can impose a 1% sales tax to fund school construction and renovation projects. Based on distribution sheets provided by the VDOE, the proposed House amendments result in an estimated $15 million increase in revenues from the superintendent's proposed operating revenues. The proposed Senate amendments resulted in nearly an estimated $10.4 million increase to the superintendent's proposed operating revenues. The conference budget includes removing the support position cap and the special education add-on. It also includes the funding for competitive grants for school construction. Given the current superintendent's proposed budget includes a transfer of 40 Title VI-B grant positions and exceeds required SOQ instructional and support staff, additional expenditures are not anticipated to be needed for special education and personnel. As mentioned earlier, we estimate $1,000 for all contracted employees prorated based on their FTE status will cost roughly $7 million. We'd planned for its expenditure if the House bill had been included in the conference budget. With consideration of that, about $8 million would be remaining to allocate to operating expenditures under the House scenario, and roughly $10.4 million will be available to allocate under the Senate scenario. The impact of the conference budget mirrors the Senate scenario. So what happens next? The governor will review the proposed conference budget. He will either approve it as is or amend it and send it back to the General Assembly by March 24th. The process will continue until a consensus is reached between the governor and the General Assembly. While the state's budget process is underway, we must also provide the city with our proposed needs as a part of Chesapeake's budget process. Therefore, we will continue to use the governor's proposed December budget as the basis of the school's proposed budget. On March 10th, a second public hearing will be held, and the administration will seek the board's adoption of proposed fiscal year 25-26 budget and request action for the use of one-time funds. Both requests will be forwarded to the city for inclusion in the manager's budget proposal for council consideration. On April 7th, a budget update will be provided to share the superintendent's priorities for additional funding. Then, after council appropriations on May 19th, modification will be presented, if any, from City Council's May 2025 budget appropriation and the final state budget. It will conclude with the board's final reconciliation and adoption of the fiscal year 25-26 budget. Thank you for your time this evening, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
I don't see any questions on this presentation either, so thank you. We will now move on to our action agenda. The first item tonight are the opportunities provided by the Virginia School Boards Association. Dr. Smith?
Thank you, Chair Swigert. I just want to share a little bit of information. We have 2 opportunities before the board. The first one is the Virginia School Boards Association's April Hot Topic Conference. This one's in Charlottesville, Virginia, on April 17th. If there's a board member who's interested in attending this opportunity, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, the next opportunity is the Virginia School Board Association's Tidewater Region Spring Forum. This one is closer to home. It's in Newport News on April 22nd. Is there a board member who would like to attend this opportunity? Mr. Poole? I will request a motion to approve the attendance of Mr. Poole.
I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Scott. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Walker. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Dr. Smith?
Motion carries with all board members voting yes. This concludes my item.
Thank you. The next item is the appropriation of reversion funds for capital projects. Ms. Stutz?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last year, you may remember that we set aside $5 million for projects that were going to be bid, that were upcoming to be bid, and quite honestly, we were concerned that they were going to come in over budget. If you remember, we were in a very volatile time with construction costs. Contractors weren't holding prices. Some of them were only holding them for 2 weeks and 30 days at the most. And of course, inflation was also very high. So we were concerned that some of our projects were going to come in over budget. Y'all do know, of course, we establish a construction budget in basically late summer, early fall. You all hear the capital improvement plan in the fall, take action in December. Council approves the capital plan, capital budget in May. So really, by the time you get to the fact that we're getting any funds, we're almost another year out. So that's not always a bad thing when things are relatively stable, but in the environment we were in, we were concerned that we had a lot of projects out and we were going to be over budget. So we set this aside as a fail-safe. So as of now, what we like to do is we like to use part of it. We had increased the cost for Culpeper, the elementary schools in Culpeper Landing, but we quite honestly didn't increase it enough when we saw how much Crestwood Elementary came in at. So we like to request appropriation of $3 million be added to that budget. And then also we have some money allocated for B.M. Williams, and that did come in a little bit over, and we like to allocate $500,000 for that project. So we still have $1.5 million available for other projects that would come in. And then we also had some, just so you know, that came in on budget and did really well. Southeastern came in as we anticipated. We did very well with the additions and modifications at Indian River and Western Branch. So those came in well, but we did have a few that came over, and so this was helpful for us. So again, we like to use 3.5 of the $5 million. And if y'all are in agreement, what we'll do, then we'll follow up with appropriate paperwork with the city.
I'll entertain a motion for approval. So moved. Moved by Ms. Huddle. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Poole. Is there any additional discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Dr. Smith.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
Last item on the action agenda this evening is the proposed rezoning to accommodate Crestwood and B.M. Williams Elementary Schools. Ms. Stutz?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are at the second public hearing this evening, the work session, and what we'll have this evening is Mr. Pope from our planning office will come up and he'll Again, go over the options just so everybody can see them once again. And then as you are aware, since we added an option, we put the survey back out. He'll go over the survey results with you all, and we'll answer any questions you have, and then we will be requesting final action this evening. Alex?
Good evening, everyone. I am here to present the update to our proposed attendance zone adjustments for the opening of Crestwood Intermediate School, the new Crestwood Elementary School to replace the intermediate school, and B.M. Williams Elementary School, which is currently the primary school. So as Paige mentioned, today's presentation will summarize the already presented rezoning options. The second community survey came back, and I'll have the results for that for you. And that'll include the added option 4 that was requested by the board. And then we'll reiterate staff's recommendation as well as our implementation plan going forward before finally requesting final action for a vote on our rezoning options. So here's our current zone with B.M. Williams on the east side along Battlefield Boulevard, and then Crestwood Intermediate School on the west side by Great Bridge Boulevard. And as you know, the students who attend these schools attend both of them. They go to K2 to the primary school, and then they move up to Crestwood for 3 through 5. And once we draw these rezoning lines, that will no longer be the case. So here's the visual of our 4 options. Option 1 was that north-south line along the Chesapeake Expressway, and the color scheme applies to all 4 of these. The areas in blue on the east side will attend B.M. Williams Elementary School for K through 5. On the west side in yellow, they'll attend Crestwood Elementary School. And option 2 follows the expressway as well until meeting Battlefield Boulevard. Then it heads south to the Intracoastal Waterway. And the primary reason for drawing this line was to mitigate a minor traffic concern from option 1 that transportation raised with us. Option 3 follows the expressway until meeting Kempsville Road, and then it follows the center line of Kempsville Road northeast until the Southern Railroad. And then that puts that whole southern portion of the existing zone into the Crestwood Elementary School side. And then there additionally requested option 4. It's a little bit more of a description. It starts on the north side and follows Battlefield down to I-64, which it then follows to the west until meeting Chesapeake Expressway, following that south until reaching Oscar Smith High School, and then it heads southwest until the Intracoastal Waterway. So you can kind of see how this line's a little bit less clearly defined than the other 3. All right, so enrollment figures that we had. Both schools were at a capacity of 725. B.M. Williams Primary is at 102% capacity. As you know, that does not include the Chesapeake Preschool Initiative. Crestwood Intermediate School is at 101% of capacity. Now, the enrollment figures that we're looking at here have been that if we took that same student population living in the same locations that they live now and draw these lines, where would we end up? Option 1 would bring B.M. Williams Elementary School down to 94% of capacity. And then you'll see on all the options, the enrollment goes up for Crestwood Elementary School, but they're obviously going to a much larger building. So their percentage on option 1 here comes down to 84%. Option 2, this is the option that provides the least amount of relief to B.M. Williams Elementary School, only bringing it down to 98%. But it leaves the most room for growth at Crestwood Elementary School, being at 81%. And then option 3 was the last of our initially presented options, and that one provided the most amount of relief to B.M. Williams, bringing them down to 91%, but Crestwood Elementary School had the least room for growth, being at 86%. So then we added option 4, the request for an option that we could potentially get rid of all the portables, which that option brings B.M. Williams Elementary School down to 85%. However, Crestwood Elementary School, being at 91%, has very little room for growth, which is important, as we pointed out the last time, that there's the most amount of land zone for residential development on that side of the existing zone. All right, so our survey had the same 4 categories as the first time. 2 things to point out. The first time we only had 130 respondents. This time we had 367, so it's almost triple what we had the first time. But then again, it's still a relatively small sample size for the size of the zone that we're talking about here. So kind of halfway in each direction. Parents are still the largest respondent pool at 179, plus an additional 26 who are also CPS employees. And then we had another 125 CPS employees. And for clarity, those three do not overlap. That 26 parent employee is its own. It's not mixed into the parent or the employee number. And then the last category being community members at large who are not employees, nor do they have a child in the school district. We had 37 of those. So our overall results, the number one preferred option, was option 1 with 37% of the count. And the next two were option 3 and option 4 were essentially the same, both 23% with one respondent's different between the two. And the least preferred option was option 2 with only 17% of the respondent pool. And this is what it looks like from our subgroups. Parents preferred option 1 at 36%. The parent and employee category was around the same at 38%. Similarly, employees preferred option 1 at 40%, the only contrasting group being those community members preferred option 3 at 45%. So with that in mind, staff's recommendation is still option 1. It does have the clearest and simplest geographic border. That always helps to eliminate any potential confusion parents might have about where their children are going to be going to school. And we also get to reduce portables at B.M. Williams by at least half while leaving space at Crestwood Elementary School for that potential enrollment growth due to residential development in the area. So going forward, we still are on schedule to complete construction, meaning we'll rezone and open the new school for the coming school year this fall for the 2025-26 school year. We are still having ongoing faculty and staff meetings, keeping them informed about where we're at in the process, also how this process will actually affect them as we implement it. And as far as students go, all affected students within this school zone will attend the school for which they're zoned, which would include all current K through 4 students in the zone, as well as incoming kindergarten students. However, outgoing 5th graders will not be affected. They'll still attend the same middle school that they were already planning to attend next year. And with that, I believe I'll be turning it over to Paige.
Yes, Madam Chair, really just if you have any questions, we'll try to answer them this evening. And if not, then we're requesting final action this evening.
Does any board member have any additional questions at this time? Mr. McCormick?
No problem.
Other options and being, thank you, and being flexible, it's been helpful. And you know, in planning for rezonings, there's a lot of competing interests. There's no way to make everyone happy, so you're trying to figure out what's best for the school system, what's best long term. In my opinion, I think options 1 or 3 stand out as you know, the most relevant, the most likely to solve the best problems that we can and put the schools, you know, in the best position. The only difference between options 1 and 3 is that rectangle piece of land that goes from the expressway, follows Kempsville Road to the railroad, right?
Yeah, just that southern portion.
And a lot of that land's commercial. The school actually owns land in that rectangle. Some of it is likely undevelopable that's down near the intercoastal. Do you have any idea in that rectangle if there's undeveloped residential property or high-density residential property?
There is some. I don't remember the exact total, but if we looked at the last presentation, there was a change going from option 1 to option 3. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly how much that change was, but it wasn't 0.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, that to me would decide whether option 1 or option 3 is better, because otherwise they're the exact same. And if we're concerned, which I think we are, with what might develop and either need to feed into Crestwood versus what might develop and stay in B.M. Williams, then that line would be, if we're looking at options 1 or 3, which I think we are, then what's in that quadrant? Do you have the ability to pull up that the map? I don't know if we can show that so I can see what I'm talking about.
I don't have the ability to
Mr. McCormick, I can actually, I pulled it up just so I could tell you. Option 1, B.M. Williams had 32 acres available, and in level service, it was 225 units. Crestwood was 79 acres, and it had 8 units for level of service. And option 3, B.M. Williams had 17 acres available and 197 units, and Crestwood Elementary had 94 acres and 36 units.
Okay, so I'm a visual learner, so I hear
Okay.
that, but I don't know if I can understand that without seeing it.
All right.
And I guess what I'm trying to get to is, to me, that rectangle down there would be the distinction of what might be better from option 1 versus option 3, because it's really what could be developed in that section. There we go. Yeah, in that bottom section, if you're looking at the maps of option 1 and 3, you see we're towards the bottom right of it, and you have following the expressway down Kentsville and up to the railroad. The only difference is that rectangle. So to me, the question becomes, in that rectangle, what are we potentially facing that would make more sense to feed into Crestwood versus feed into B.M. Williams?
Sorry, look at the last presentation. So available residential developments for option 1 was just over 79 acres for the Crestwood area. And then whenever we moved to option 3, it was just over 94 acres. So, like.
So then in that area, what was that?
About 15 acres, yeah.
Change and that's residential land?
Yeah, that's already approved residential.
But we don't know whether that 15 acres is single family versus high density apartments or condos?
I don't have that information on my computer right now, no. I mean, we can look it up, but I don't have it available right now.
Because 15 acres of single family is really not all that much, but 15 acres that could potentially be, 5 or 6 3-story apartment complexes, which would be a lot. And I feel like I hate to ask for more information, but I brought this up, I think, at the last meeting, is knowing in that area exactly the density of what we could be facing could be the difference between 5 kids and 40, 50, 60 kids. And if all we're looking at is changing either, that quadrant to go to Crestwood versus to go to B.M. Williams, I really would like to know whether that's high density or it's just low density single family.
Mr. McCormick, and I can't answer that off the top of my head either. The one thing I will point out is, this is kind of a snapshot of where things are today. From your past experience that someone could come in and rezone property that's either commercial, they can change it to residential, or it might be A1 or something like that. And so it doesn't include any potential rezonings, and it would only be looking at what we have currently on the book. So this is a snapshot. I wouldn't want to sit there and go, okay, we're down to, we know we're going to get 25 kids here, because we also have to take into consideration that it's not just what we're adding, we also have to look at survival ratios and how many people are going to continue to be at each school based on where they are. So it's not just, lots of times we tend to look at what's new and what's the growth, but we don't think about, okay, maybe there's a small class coming in versus a large class going out, and so the numbers are going to be lower at the building. So just to keep that in mind, not that we won't go back and get more information for you, but just keep that in mind, that it's really just a snapshot of where we are at this particular time.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Dean?
Thank you. I had a couple questions that were the same as Mr. McCormick, so I'm not going to repeat those. The survey, can anyone take the survey?
Yes.
Anybody?
Yeah, we chose to do it for everyone because if we tried to target existing students, we would miss out on, say, like incoming kindergarten students that weren't registered. So that was part of the concern, is that if we tried to limit it, we would actually be, or someone who was moving from a different part of the city who does care because they're going to be here next year.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just a little concerned that the public hearing, we didn't have a lot of input, but we got a lot of input via email and things like that. And then looking at the survey results, which in my opinion, I think are pretty relatively low. I also want to just make it clear that I do appreciate the community involvement. So any decision I make isn't me ignoring, what the community said in the survey. But I think that surveys sometimes can be a little flawed. Is there in the survey, was there a free form question that provided your team some insight as to why folks kind
You
of went
mean
the way they
just
did?
like an extra comment section?
Yeah, like,
Yeah, we
were
did,
they-
we
they-
did generally have that in there.
So they were able to provide some justification for themselves as to why they were
Yeah.
choosing one option, and you took that into account?
Yeah.
Okay. For the pros that you listed on option 1, you put reduces portables for BM Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Option 3 still reduces portables, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And
All
then,
the, to be clear, all the options do.
Okay.
To different extents.
Okay, and then the other pro you had listed was leave space for development
Mhm.
for Crestwood. Option 3 still leaves space, it's just about the amount of space, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I think that was all I had. Thank you.
Ms. Heidel?
I have 2 questions, if you can pull your map of the 4 choices back up.
He's on
Oh,
it.
sorry. I'll go ahead and start the question.
There it is.
Currently, because students go from one school to another, within this zone, there are multiple hotels that house homeless students. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that option 1 divides those hotels more equitably between the 2 schools, does it not? I think option 3 puts an additional hotel in the Crestwood school zone.
Paige, does it? I know we had this conversation. I don't think it does. I think regardless of which one of those 2 options, it's in that little triangle that's sort of right on that southern portion. So I think on options 1 and option 3, that hotel is still on the Crestwood side, right? Yes.
Okay. And my second question, and I don't know that we have any way to account for it, but this is one of the things we encountered when the new Oscar Smith happened many moons ago now. We have no way to know who the parents and students are that will decide, now that there's a brand new, shiny, spanking new building, will pull their students out of private school to bring them back to a brand new building, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions or comments? Well, at this time, we will entertain a motion for approval of one of the options, if someone would like to make a motion. Ms. Scott?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion based on stakeholder feedback, based on the recommendation of the administration, based on the questions from board members' answers and feedback, and also based on the knowledge that this is not an end-all, be-all solution, and that we recognize that as a board and administration, we want to continue to pursue progress at BM Williams, but I'm going to make a motion to approve option 1.
Motion made by Ms. Scott, seconded by Ms. Huddle. Is there any additional discussion at this time? Mr. McCormick?
I would like to support option 1, but or option 3, depending upon the answer to my question. And I'm going to vote against it, not because I don't think option 1 is the best, but just because I don't feel like I have the information that I would need to make a rational decision. So, not voting against option 1. Only for the reason that I feel like I need more information to vote on it correctly. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarity. At this time, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Dr. Smith?
Motion carries with a vote of 5 to 4, with board members Cologne, Dean, McCormick, and Walker voting in opposition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now move on to the superintendent's report. Over to you, Dr. Cotton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we close School Board Appreciation Month, Hickory High School students created personalized keychains for each of you. I hope you saw yours. They were featuring your name, laser etched on each side and on one side and the CPS logo on the other. And to sweeten the gesture, they also included a popcorn treat. So again, as we close out the month, the students at Hickory High wanted to recognize our board members. It's hard to believe March is almost here. We have several upcoming celebrations in March, including Women's History Month, Fine and Performing Arts Month, VSBA Equity in Education Month, and National Reading Month. At this time, I'd like to share my spotlight for this evening. Thank you again for the opportunity to spotlight the great things going on in our schools. This month has already been full of some exciting celebrations and initiatives, and I'm so proud tonight to share some of these moments with you. One of those celebrations that recently occurred was SRD, SRO, and SSO Appreciation Day. Our school resource deputies, school resource officers, and school security officers are invaluable members of our team and community and play a vital role in ensuring that our students show up to school feeling safe and secure. Thank you to the Chesapeake Sheriff's Department and the Chesapeake Police Department for their support of our Resource Deputy and Resource Officer program. In addition, thank you to all of our resource deputies, officers, and school security officers for all their hard work and dedication in providing a safe learning environment. We appreciate all you do. Another crucial piece to providing a safe environment are our crossing guards. We celebrated Crossing Guard Appreciation Day recently across the district as a way to recognize the work of these individuals and their role in keeping our community safe. Additionally, we were also very proud that one of our own crossing guards was honored by the Virginia Department of Transportation as one of the most outstanding crossing guards in the state. Congratulations to Mr. Matthew Barker from Deep Creek Central Elementary for being honored for his dedication in making our schools and communities safe. And you might remember, if you attended the Teacher of the Year ceremony, Mr. Barker's name may sound familiar as he was also recognized as their 2025 Teacher of the Year. I'd also like to congratulate our student artists who have work featured in our virtual winter art show. If you haven't had a chance, I'd highly recommend you visit our website and check out the amazing talent on display. The show features the incredible artwork of students at the elementary, middle, and high school levels with work that represents a wide range of artistic media and techniques. Thank you to our art teachers for curating the online gallery for us to enjoy, and for all of our students for showcasing their passion and creativity. Some of our middle school students also demonstrated their creativity at the VEX Robotics competition earlier this month. Deep Creek Middle School hosted their 4th annual VEX Robotics competition, which saw teams from across Virginia compete and showcase their innovation, teamwork, and engineering skills. Hugo Owens Middle School's Next Gen team won the Design Award, and Oscar Smith Middle School's Adam Katz took home the Judge's Choice Award, with Hugo Owens Middle advancing to the state championship in March. Take a look at some of the highlights from this year's tournament. You can tell our students had a great time. Our district also crowned winter champions in our Chesapeake Middle School League. Over the past 2 weeks, championships were decided in wrestling, speech, and girls and boys basketball. Great Bridge Middle School won the CMSL wrestling title with a first-place finish in the city tournament, and also took home the CMSL speech championship. Oscar Smith Middle won the boys basketball championship, and Jolliffe Middle capped off an undefeated season by capturing the girls' basketball title. Congratulations to all of our students on their successful seasons, and thank you to the coaches, trainers, and staff that make this all happen. It takes a lot of planning to make things like this happen, and that includes planning for the future. So tonight, I want to close by highlighting our recent strategic planning workshop. Together, employees and community members from across the district collaborated and designed the foundation for the Empower 2030 plan that will be used to guide our school students and staff towards new levels of success. Special thanks to our Department of Planning, Policy, and Research for facilitating these efforts, and to all of our staff and community members who attended to help us lay this foundation for a strong and innovative future. This completes my spotlight for this month.
Thank you, Dr. Cotton. Last on our agenda this evening is board member items. Does any board member have an item to bring before the group? Ms. Scott?
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on the second speaker that spoke tonight. I think your name was Melinda. I just wanted to encourage you to please follow up with an email. I can empathize with you as I used to time myself at home when I would write my parent speeches before I came to school board meetings, and I know it's hard to stay in that 3 minutes, especially when you get emotional. So I empathize with you there, and I just hope that you take the time, email us, because we do care about what you have to say, and we want to hear. Thank you.
Dr. Walker?
Thank you so much. I just have one question. I think it's either for Ms. Stutz or Ms. Edwards, one of the two of you. I figured this would be a more appropriate time to ask it rather than during the rezoning because CPI is technically not included in the numbers, I know. But I am curious. I know that there's been discussion about potentially at BM Williams and maybe other places kind of dispersing CPI more throughout the city and things of that nature. So I'm just curious if that's a decision that will come before us. I know it's treated different than a rezoning, but I'm not sure if that's something that will come before the board if you decide to kind of move forward with that or what that looks like for procedural moving forward.
You want to go or you want me to go? I would just say that's typically a programmatic decision that does not come before the board because it doesn't involve policy, but we'll be taking a look at the staffing, what the needs are at all of the school, just like we do that annually based on data.
Sure. Okay. All right. Yeah, I was just curious what that looked like moving forward. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Seeing no additional board member items this evening, I will call this meeting adjourned.